Okay, hello guys, the real Slim Shady here, and today we're going to go back into Nerd Corner and talk about Doctor Who, which is something I haven't really done in a while, so yeah, I thought I'd cover it today. FYI, this whole video was spawned from the official Doctor Who channel when they posted this Series 10 teaser.
Hi, well, there we go. Well, they've got me back again. I'm hard at it. Yeah, I just did the sanding, I'm doing the primer. Popping on the base coat. It's a lovely colour of blue here I've got.
That's right, Missy is coming back. Woo! So the reason I'm actually making this video is because Missy is probably the most divisive character in the entire series. And if not the entire series, at least the new series. And a lot of people love Missy, a lot of people love the Master even more so. And so there's this kind of overlapping hatred with them. Some people think the Master's overused, some people just think Missy's irritable, and some people just don't agree with the sex change. I'm going to mostly focus on that last one because I feel that the other two are more subjective. In case you don't know, in Doctor Who, the title character, the Doctor, is a Time Lord. Time Lords can do this thing where they regenerate every single cell in their body when they die, called regeneration, funnily enough. They first did this in 1966 because the actor at the time, William Hartnell, was rapidly declining with his health. The studio executives wanted to replace the main character without actually replacing him. So the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, was almost a completely different character. A lot of things change actors, obviously James Bond is quite an important one, but this meant that they could carry on the continuity. They've now carried on this trick for over 50 years and the show is one of the biggest in the world. So if they can change their personalities, they can change their gender and race too, right? Well, yeah, I can't really argue with that because it is cemented in the show now. There were plenty of arguments saying that the only reason the Master was able to change gender was due to the fact that he died so many times and used up all of his lives. He could kind of just go against the rules of natural regeneration. But then they made a Time Lord General regenerate in the Season 9 episode Hellbent, just to sew that one up. Oh, and with regeneration-proof makeup, I might add. Maybe if Moffat spent more time covering up his plot holes and less time pandering to critics, Chris Chibnall wouldn't be left with a shit-covered Swiss cheese to deal with. Basically, the Master-Missy switch was an experiment. If the audience well received Missy, then they can go ahead and do it to the Doctor. The reaction to Missy was actually kind of lukewarm, but I still feel like it's made the sex change of the Doctor eventually inevitable. I want to talk about it because a lot of people seem to think that changing the Doctor's sex is a massive step forward. But I think it's taking 2 steps back. Missy's big reveal, as predictable as it was just bad. And I just kind of felt like it was lazy writing because there was so much more they could have done with the character instead. The problem here is that there isn't a problem. Doctor Who has had plenty of strong female leads over the years. The most notable was Sarah Jane Smith, and obviously she got her own spin-off. But there have been others. There's been Romana, Leela, Tegan, Ace, Grace, Rose, Donna, Martha, River Song, and the Rani. That last one, the Rani, is of course important because it is essentially the female version of the Master. When they brought her into the show, they essentially just wanted a female villain like the Master because the Master was overused. At her core, though, the Rani is characteristically different to the Master, and that is why the gender change of Missy was completely irrelevant. They already had a strong female villain. More to the point, they had an underused strong female villain, and they still decided to piggyback off of an already successful established character. The Master over the years has been better received by the Rani, by critics and audiences. And that's probably helped by the fact that he's appeared more in the show. So in my mind, going off of the success of the Master rather than going from an underused character does not empower women at all. It doesn't create strong female characters, it does the opposite. And the same goes for Ghostbusters. People didn't hate the Ghostbusters because it was full of women. People hated the Ghostbusters because it was crap. Because it was an already well-established franchise. A lot of people loved the franchise. And then they went in and butchered it and chucked a load of women in it for their feminist agenda. And why? Why? Do you know which female-led films did do okay in cinemas? That's right, Star Wars. I'm not going to deny that those films didn't leech off of the old franchise a little bit, because obviously they did. The difference is people asked for more Star Wars films. They asked for a continuation. Nobody asked for them to remake the Ghostbusters / well, whatever the hell they did with it. They created new characters, and they treated those characters more or less in the same way that they treated them in the old franchise. Fair enough, there was a little bit of a mishap with them not including Rey and some of the toy sets and things like that, but the actual films themselves treated Rey as what she was, a strong female lead. That brings me to another important point. Rey was her own character. Jin was her own character. The Ghostbusters cast were their own characters, but it was very clear to the audience which character was leeching off of the old version. That's the thing with Missy. She feels like her own character. The reason that people were doubtful about whether she would be the Master was partly to do with the fact that it was a gender swap. That does kind of reduce the predictability a little bit. The obvious name never helped though, so there was that. But I think the main thing that put that little bit of doubt in my mind that she might not be the Master was the fact that her personality feels very different. She refers to the Doctor as her boyfriend and kisses him and does weird random stuff for no particular reason. The old Master feels cunning and manipulative, and admittedly John Sims' version was very psychopathic and just batshit crazy, but he still feels like an updated version of the character instead of a new character. And I think the same thing would happen with the Doctor. If we switched to a female-led show, it would feel like a different character. And the whole point in the regeneration cycle and all that was to keep it feeling like the same character. Even though the personalities could be very different at the core, they're still very much the same character. Audiences and even characters within the show are going to react very differently around a female Doctor to what they are a male Doctor. Let's face it, it's going to be hella awkward for Rose. So yeah, we have drifted to my actual point here, which is that I don't think there should be a female Doctor. The response from people actually involved in the show has also been very mixed, which leads to people saying things like, well, if the actual Doctor says so... Shut up. Funnily enough, the actors that play the Doctor are also human beings and therefore have their own individualised opinions. I'll leave links to responses from Doctors 5, 6 and 7 in the description box below if you want to check those out. But you can still make your own opinion. They are, it's 3 different Doctors with 3 different opinions. Imagine that. I also hate that people group minorities with females in regards to this. That's not to do with the fact that women are the literal majority in the UK. It's more to do with the fact that it changes the character in completely different ways. If the Doctor regenerates into a black person, it doesn't need to be mentioned. The new companion, Bill, this will be her first time she sees the Doctor regenerate. She'll have obviously grown used to Peter Capaldi's version of the Doctor, and it's going to be a shock, as it always is. We've seen it, I don't know, 10, however many times people have been there when they've regenerated. But we've seen it a lot of times anyway. The fact that his skin colour changes is probably not going to change the way that she views regeneration as being a weird thing. It's just as weird as watching a bald guy with big ears turn into a skinny guy with spiky, sticky up hair as it is seeing a white guy change into a black guy. But changing from a man into a woman is going to change her reaction. The reaction to it is going to be a lot different because the relationship between the two characters is going to be a lot different. The relationship between the two characters would change anyway because they, like I say, they do have, to a point, different personalities when they regenerate. Think about it in terms of general life. Are your relationships with women different to they are with men? Probably. If we look at the sort of bigger picture of this, I mean, sexuality could also come into this. We don't know what kind of sexual orientation Bill has, but presuming that they're another heterosexual, they're probably going to show more affection towards a male doctor than what they are a female doctor. So that's also a factor that, obviously, like I said with Rose earlier, she's going to react very differently to a female doctor to what she is to a male doctor. I feel like I'm kind of going around in circles with that point because I'm trying to think of a way to word it, but essentially you get the idea. Obviously, changing of the gender is going to change other people's reaction towards that person. Changing the skin colour isn't going to change that because they are used to the doctor changing, they're not used to the doctor changing into a different woman. And like I said, audiences are going to react to that differently. Audiences relate to a male doctor and have done for 50 years. It's going to change significantly, and I wouldn't be surprised if viewership drops significantly when they change to a female doctor. So I think I'll wrap it up here. First of all, I think I'm just going to say my top 3 picks of what Missy could have been / should have been. First of all, the Rani, talked about this, already established character, it just makes sense. Number 2, I think she could have also been Susan Foreman, which is the granddaughter of the Doctor, appeared in the very first episode and very first series of Doctor Who, and he never came back for her, which is quite significant. We haven't seen her since 1983. She's been briefly mentioned in Class, I think, and briefly mentioned by Clara as well, but we don't actually know what happened to her. We don't know if she went to the Time War, if she died of old age or what. So that could have been a way of reintroducing her and something interesting, something different. And number 3, a completely different new character, because originality is actually a thing. Just a note here for people that said that Missy's characteristics could only be matched up to the Master. They couldn't have changed it to anything else. Whilst I don't put loads of trust in Stephen Moffat sometimes, I do imagine that he figures out his characters and stuff at the beginning of the series rather than 5 minutes before they're revealed. Therefore, her personality would be different to suit the appropriate character as well. And here are my top 3 picks for the next Doctor. Number 1 is Ollie Barbieri. This guy played JJ in the UK version of Skins. He's a relatively unknown actor, which is something I'd kind of like to go back to. I think he's got that doctorish look. He's very young, he's only 25, so he would be the youngest person to ever play the Doctor. But I'm fairly certain that he could pull it off. Number 2 is Richard Ayoade. Richard is a very popular choice at the moment. I've never really seen him do any sort of serious roles, but he'd definitely be able to pull off the quirky side of the character. He also directed the film Submarine, which is a fantastic film, and that kind of gives me hope that he'd be a little bit more involved behind the scenes compared to some past incarnations. And number 3, Harry Melling. I'm not an enormous Potterhead, before you think that. He played Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter. The thing that puts confidence in this one for me is simply the fact that he said that he'd like to do it. So, yeah, again, I think he's got the sort of doctorish look. He was in an episode of Musketeers, and he was quite good in that. He's not exactly a terrible actor in Harry Potter. You don't see a great amount of him, but I feel confident he could do it. Yeah, and just to top it all off, he's also the grandson of Patrick Troughton, second Doctor, so there's that as well. And so there you have it. Gender swapping characters is not the same as empowering women. In fact, changing any sort of existing character is not the same as empowering any kind of minority. If you want a strong character, make one. That's my opinion. I'm perfectly fine with swapping them here and there, and like I'd say, Idris Elba is very close to the top of my list for picks for the next James Bond, but it's still not the same as creating your own character. I'll be happy to respond to any comments on this, what your thoughts are, providing that they actually have substance. Apart from that, thank you for watching, and adios amigos.